And we're live.
This is another podcast of just people shooting the shit with no actual credentials or anything, just being like, dude, this is just something I noticed with like women, like they don't like to. Yeah. People don't like me. It's just like, I'm not liked. Yeah, but in all seriousness, this is basically just us, a back and forth of trying to like
explain ourselves.
Yeah, explain, like, it's like the classic, like, where have we been? It's like something or other, it's like something or other, we broke up, and then like the other thing, it's like this is
explaining
like,
why we fell off.
Yeah, but, or this is more so for like the character wise, like why some of the characters like we come up with, like you don't see them anymore, or if you only see them rarely or in instances, but there's like been a dearth of some characters like that we still want to use, like, so basically one of them is like the Lockhart family line, which we thought of like for like at least probably like as far back as like 07, 06 or whatever, just stupid like crap as kids, pretty much just.
So it's like Teddy Lockhart, Bobby Lockhart, which I mean, not all of these are set in stone of who's who, but it was like Teddy Lockhart, Bobby Lockhart, and
Jackson
then there was
Lockhart or Jack Baby.
There was Jackson Lockhart. I think was supposed to be a
like cop or something.
He was supposed to be a park ranger, which I'm totally fine with that character just getting nixed because I think he was essentially just the park ranger version of Jack Boot. Totally want to nix Jack Boot. Never again, ever again. That's just and also not only do I find that character just awful and cringe and never want to do it again. Not that I'm not trying to like dunk on it totally, because obviously for the time it was something I thought was funny, so it is what it is. But especially now in today's climate, that would be like just the worst thing to do ever. Just wouldn't be not
didn't
reading
really
the
age
room.
well.
Yeah, not reading the room at all. Not that I want to be too sensitive about that, but I would also just feel personally icked doing that.
Unless we made like major revisions to him.
Renovations. You might as well just create a new word there. I mean, that fits.
Neologism.
Yeah, so it was like Jack Boot Lockhart, Jackson Lockhart, Teddy Lockhart, Bobby Lockhart was Teddy's brother. Supposed to be his younger brother. Bobby Lockhart was a politician who's like either running for mayor or is mayor or something.
They pretty much like, but the whole thing was like there's also a fictional version of the town that we grew up in, kind of.
Which is this one.
Yeah, which we're in right now.
Yeah.
Speak of the devil, but yeah, it's the Blumentsville basically is what it's like, the fictional version of that, and it's like just like, of course it's like kind of almost like a Terry Gilliam kind of Brazil kind of world in some sense, or it's taken on that like kind of look of just kind of like just dystopia, and like basically the Lockhart family just somehow like wheedles their way into these like deals, and like Teddy Lockhart's like the most but like kind of ambitious kind of charlatan, like kind of he's always like literally like a snake oil salesman, like going around with like his stupid little carriage, like. And like the other thing too is like they basically, so there's like a formula to most of these characters, but like they basically are like kind of, some of them are Beavis and Butthead kind of almost, like they have like a formula kind of thing that's like they show up like each time, like each or timeline, like they don't really, like the Simpsons kind of I think does that, like where they basically stay stagnant, but like some of them also like travel through time too. So it's a bit of like a Blackadder kind of thing, with like Rowan Atkinson playing all these different versions of like, you know, like Puritan kind of England all the way back to like, you know, like the medieval times.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like a mixed thing where like one of the things, and I know I was coming up with stupid, ridiculous, over the top plot lines of like the lineage, where it's like Teddy Lockhart's great whatever grandpa was in Civil War, and then before that it was like Mexican American War, and there was like a whole like timeline of like who's had a kid with, or whose kid was whose, or you know, or I was like looking up this American Mexican War and trying to get the timeline right of like, okay, this would have been growing up right before the Civil War, or blah blah blah. And then there was like later on there was additions of like, and Teddy's lineage goes back to like Scotland or whatever. There's like a fucking castle where his whatever, you know, the Duke owned a cat or whatever, some rich person owned a castle, royalty. maybe he inherited or something. And then, but then also some of the plot lines, this was like, obviously we never filmed this or anything. It was just all just stuff I wrote down, and then I kind of like scrapped it years later because I was like, this sucks. Or I can't remember the timeline of when I came up with it, and then a few years later, 2016, 17, 18, whatever, I like scrapped it. But there was just this whole idea of like a demon trying to like awaken an ancient demon thing, and then Teddy Lockhart.
Yeah, well, I thought that was like a joke where at first it was like Teddy was like kind of, what was he, like inviting or conjuring up some like weird demon, and he's like
yeah, there were sort of two,
Moloch or something.
yeah, there was joke versions of it, and then there was like, but in my mind I also had this idea of like, no, there's maybe a more serious plotline of like, he gets like actually possessed by some ancient demon that like merges with his body. Now he's like kind of super powered.
Like a
There's like
Faustian
smoke coming out of his mouth and stuff. I mean that would be too much of a tonal shift. Probably it wouldn't really fit that well. I think that was me just having a serious idea, but I was trying to graft it onto like pre-existing characters, and it probably just wouldn't have worked. It probably should have just been a separate thing. But yeah, there's like the Teddy, and also there's like the Teddy thing is like, I was like, in my head I was coming up with all sorts of crazy. This was around the same time that we came up with the unbelievably bonkers backstory for vaudeville.
Oh god!
Where he was like an alien.
Vaudeville is definitely.
He was like the AI,
it's just
fucking AI of a crashed alien spaceship.
Yeah, it's like
it was just getting way too
I think we like dug ourselves into this awful hole with that, because like we were trying to like, we didn't actually need to create that character. All it was like an improv like stupid thing where we were like on the microphone. We didn't even film this, but we had like a fair amount of like these really just stupid, indulgent, dumb thing. Yeah,
I don't even know what the exact origin of that was. What was
I think it was like you yelled vaudeville or something. It's like something to do with Teddy and Archie, because like Archie was another thing, which is basically like the creature.
Somebody was saying something and I yelled it in response, as in it was like on the topic of something to do with vaudeville. So I was just like, vaudeville is a suggestion. I can't even remember if you came up with the guy or character, I came up with it.
But I think like somehow we just went with it, and it was just really stupid. We just thought it was funny for some reason.
It was like pre-association, whatever, which I guess is good in its own right. The problem is that it started just getting dumb and just like, it's like it's too much, like it's too, and it doesn't work. And it was like a thing where we thought it was hilarious, but then it's like, is it really hilarious?
It didn't really translate well onto screen.
And then it was getting into stuff of like, actually his name's vaudeville because that stands for the something acronym, the computer on the something spaceship. It's like, just it's way too far. And then also remember we did the character bio pictures where it would say a thing describing, which those, looking back at those are like painful to think about, even though at the time I think they kind of were cool at the time actually, because I was doing like backgrounds and things that was sort of like a little bit interesting. But I remember adding like little secret hidden symbols in the background, something about vaudeville, for every, it's like just stop. And then there was like plot line around this whole time coming with the vaudeville thing and this thing and that thing. Around that period was where some of the wackiest storylines were like tentatively coming up with. One of them was like, and the MIB, Men in Black, are observing Morrison because they're thinking about recruiting him to something. It's like, it was like that level.
We were trying to tie in all these characters and like everything but the kitchen sink thing.
Yeah, or like grand plot lines
yeah.
involving like world conspiracies.
Yeah, it was all just very massively like inside jokey. Like none of it was like actually connecting to it. Like we didn't really have an audience in mind. We were just like entertaining ourselves.
Yeah, it was all like stuff we thought was
that's like what
cool.
I guess any kind of creative work is kind of partially doing anyway, because if you're the auteur behind it or whatever, or like it's gonna have ownership over you. But then there's the whole death of the author thing, which is like basically like you have to give up on it eventually and like give it to the audience to also decide on its worth or merit. So
and I'm still thinking, just trying to figure out like like the whole thing of the kind of ridiculous dumb plot lines versus like something better written and funnier maybe that takes more time to craft like an actual joke. Like for example, it's like, haha, here's this idea, because we had an idea, or either it was my idea or both of our ideas or whatever, I can't remember, but it was like Gruffy Craig is
Gruffy Craig. Another person that was based off a real person.
We're not going to say who.
Yes.
Well, we'll never give up that information ever. But like
He's an eccentric.
Gruffy Greg was in the coffee shop, of course, the coffee shop, because that's one of the only places we would film easily without having to ask for permission. Blah blah blah. So, but anyway, Gruffy Greg's in the coffee shop, and he's like watching people across the street with binoculars. Remember that whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing.
And then there may have been a thing where
he's just a crazy
no,
guy.
we
He's a
filmed
very
that, didn't we?
yeah, we did. It was like in canon.
Yeah,
like
we
stuff,
filmed that
something
one.
we did.
That's canon. No, that's the previous tile. It's been wiped. We've wiped that. The slate is clean on that.
But yeah, like the whole, like the grand thing, it's like it gets into this thing of how interconnected do you make things, or how much of an effort do you make to connect everything, and how specific do you want to get. Like for example, it's like Meat Dipper, and we'll have to talk about Meat Dipper.
Yeah, because I do love meat. I love the Meat Dipper.
Okay, so like, to bring it back to the free association thing, the Meat Dipper character himself was created from your house. You were eating the meat, and somebody said, "Hey, what if a character?" That's like free form and
like
and
what
funny.
if a character just did this?
Yeah,
and
it's
nothing
just
else?
it's just a dumb, funny idea off the cuff. It doesn't really require any mental effort to come up with like the whole thing. It's just a dumb idea, and then you can build off that. But then the actual skit itself, not to laud the skit, we filmed in front of a green screen, so it's like it's easy. But I'm saying it was like that character. How far do you want to go with that? Because you could say, well, no, this is because the plotline I came up with Meat Dipper. This is my backstory, and it could change or whatever. But the idea was, Meat Dipper is an actual movie made in the '80s, the actual '80s, and it takes place in the same timeline as Teddy Lockhart and all the other characters. And it's literally Teddy Lockhart as a younger man who did
as
acting.
it says in the actual trailer, like you put like in the credits.
Yeah, and it was like Bless Us Productions or whatever, which was a reference to Teddy and
Archie's like little studio production.
What's his last name?
Archie Adams, I think.
Archie. Are you sure it was Archie Adams? Because isn't Archie Adams the name of the comic book character?
I'm not sure. I thought Archie.
Yeah. Well, whatever. But
Archie has abs.
Archie Adams. But the idea is like, this is Teddy Lockhart, who did like an acting stint in the '80s, and he starred in several, of these movies, the Meat Dipper movies. And the general idea was probably is that they were like crappy, they were low budget, they never really hit it off. No one ever really, not many people watched it, or it bombed at the box
or
office,
like
or whatever.
Local public access thing.
Yeah, and then as he got older, he got into this, that, and the other, and then the whole church thing and blah, blah, and then until now. One of the issues.
And there was like more added to that too, with like the Meat Dipper versus Doughboy, and the Doughboy was like played by Trash Steel.
And then another issue with like the Teddy character is that he was having too many attributes dumped into it. Because I had an idea of, he used to be an actor, he was in Meat Dipper, he played the Meat Dipper, which I actually still like that thing. I kind of want that to be like canon. But then it was also like, he's like kind of a mob boss in Glubensville. And maybe even Pittsburgh, and maybe he's like a kind of higher
or Fritzburg, as we call it. Obviously you see the creative. Like,
and then on top of that, he's also a pastor, and he has this whole mega church with Archie Adams, and then it's like, and then also he was in Wall Street in the '80s, and
which is where the Blackadder thing comes in. Because I think like that's where like the whole do we get free reign to actually transpose like the Lockhart family lineage, especially with Teddy, and just like make him like walk, like kind of just waltzing through free form throughout all these different timelines.
Almost like a
like he's like free of chronology, I guess.
What's that movie called? It's almost like a Forrest Gump thing where he's like, that's with Lucky, but one way to view the Teddy Lockhart thing is too many attributes, you're stacking too many things, it's getting way out of control. Just make it more simple, have it be like two things.
Hence, I think like that's where the Ernest Loman branched off. Like Ernest Loman is like the more pathetic kind of shadow type, I guess, to go into psychology, because like he was supposed to be like the inverse, all the
is
not
he
the
supposed
feminine,
to be kind of a Lockhart character?
Yeah, kind of in the spirit of like like kind of like it's a little bit Southern speaking vaguely, but like at the same time he's like
migrating your chair a little bit, but
basically I think Ernest Loman was basically like supposed to be like just one aspect of like the rest of the Lockhart family that just like strained off to one character, basically taken from the Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman, because he's just a low man kind of thing. I just thought that was kind of funny. So basically like Loman is supposed to be like at the always like at the end of his ropes, just very pathetic. Whereas like Teddy Lockhart's just like like Teddy Lockhart just like overcomes and like he just like shoots his way to the top. Basically like you know, he has no qualms like, you know, like shedding blood to get where he's at, and like has like multiple business ventures, capitalism and all that. But like Ernest Loman's just constantly, but at the same time he's also kind of like a, I don't know if he's not even like a holy fool either, because like you feel bad for him because he's like in these, basically we came up with a counter to Ernest Loman, which is like the Minx character, which is like I'm not even sure what his first name is. I think like something like Septimus Minx or something, or like some like kind of old timey name, and he's like supposed to be like a very like puritanical, like oh, and he's like lording over everybody, and always ends up like, and again like the whole like going throughout history kind of thing where he's like, he always ends up being both the pastor and like the one of the ideas we had was like making him both the vicar / like reverend of like the church of the small town that, you know, Ernest Loman lives in, and also the judge too, and also the mayor too. Like the mayor
wasn't that the Any Way Out or movie? What was that movie with
Nothing But Trouble.
Nothing But Trouble. Isn't that kind of
with
what
Dan Aykroyd?
Aykroyd's character was sort of being?
Yeah, kind of like, I guess it was kind of.
Did he wear multiple hats in that movie?
Yeah, he was like the city kind of like, not the clerk, but like at the police office or whatever. Because he wasn't the one that pulled him over, but like it was like one of his sons or something, played by him. Or
John Candy.
Yeah, John Candy was also in it. Yeah, like, but yeah, it was basically like
and then with Teddy, I think I think one way you could look at it with Teddy is that no, he did do the Wall Street and this and the acting, the church and the thing, all of it, and that's what makes him funny, is because he's just this ridiculous, over the top character who's like done like 70 different ridiculous things in life. He's like larger than life. But and then on the Loman thing, the other thing was, did we ever decide on whether, and this is where it starts dialing in and getting specific, maybe needlessly so. It's not necessary to get this specific, but I'll get specific for a second. Was it a thing where Loman is in an alternate kind of Tall Tales universe that's sort of outside of time? It's not necessarily taking place on Earth or in a specific time period, because it's not really important. It's just sort of its own ridiculous world where you get things like the tower and the ridiculously high tower. Or is it a thing where no, Loman exists, his character and Minx and all of that is like 1800s London, basically, like straight up. It's actually within history. You know what I mean? Was there ever an answer to that, or any specific?
Yeah, I'm not sure, aside from the fact that they're just kind of able to.
I feel like it should be an alternate world, because
like
that allows for more ridiculous stuff.
Because I think like this is obviously, it's going to be like a fictional version of the world that's like has detached logic to it. Like it doesn't have.
Or like the whole court scene. The idea was to have like a weird like military type police standing guard there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it would be funnier if it was almost like a Stalinistic type, where they're wearing almost like Soviet era, like 50s era.
O'Malley's the guard.
Military tunics or something. It's like a weird alternate like side world where that's the setup there. Whereas if you lock it into like, no, it's the 1800s, well now you have to have everything be specifically the 1800s, otherwise it doesn't really make any sense.
And that's where O'Malley comes in, because he's like another, he's just kind of another character that just spurred out of nowhere, I guess.
And O'Malley sort of does a Blackadder thing too, where he exists in multiple different timelines.
Or I've been like cooking all your slop and making cleaning up after you little rascal bastards for a while.
Yeah, so O'Malley's like working class, like
emigrated from like Ireland, I think.
Blind in one eye. Peg leg, whatever. Either peg leg or hook hand. Probably hook hand would be better. But
out of like a Dickensian scene from like late 1800s, maybe, or like mid to late 1800s.